Okay, so there's a few, I guess you could say, related but not quite directly related issues that I want to encompass in this video. I'm just going to roll them into one because rather than making separate videos, because I've already got a lot of videos in my lineup, I want to talk about vigilantism, mob mentality, and the price of fame in situations where someone is accused of a very serious crime. The issues I'm going to be discussing are quite broad ranging, so bear with me. I've just read about a group in the UK called UK Pedos Exposed. It's active on Facebook. Just checked out the group, they have 35,000 plus members. Now, what this group does is they have photos of people they allege to be paedophiles, and their purported purpose is to expose these predators in order so that people know where they are, presumably to keep their children safe. Now, on the surface, that doesn't sound like a bad thing, but I've just read a report that they targeted an innocent man and his family because he was mixed up with his twin brother, who is a convicted paedophile. And it got me thinking about the danger of vigilante justice. Now, before anyone gets the wrong idea about me and before anyone dismisses me as a namby-pamby liberal, I'm absolutely not. And I fully understand the power of emotions when it comes to serious crime. I've been a victim of serious crime. I've been assaulted. I've been driven from my home by yobs. And I know what it's like to have that level of anger and mental anguish. I'm not saying it's the same thing as paedophilia, but my point is serious crime provokes very, very strong emotions, understandably so. But I've always been wary of vigilante justice. I understand why it develops because there's a perception that justice isn't taking hold or the police are not doing the job. That's usually the rationale behind vigilante justice taking hold. But vigilante justice, not only does it potentially lead to anarchy, and this for me is particularly dangerous, there's no safeguard with vigilante justice not targeting innocent people. Usually, the admins and the organizers of these sort of campaigns insist that they're responsible, but they're not. They had no safeguards in place to differentiate between this man and his brother. It's not his fault that his brother is a criminal. And it does trouble me because there are susceptible people who look at this and they respond emotionally and you know, a mob is a very, very frankly terrifying force because it sort of takes over mentality and people suddenly lose all responsibility for their own actions, and it becomes a case of, oh well, he said that, so it must be true. This has been a problem in the UK in the past. There have been many examples of innocent people being targeted because they share a name with a convicted. Almost always it's in these sort of cases, which is very sensitive concerning paedophiles and sex criminals. It's almost always the case that someone has had the same name, or a name has been mixed up, or they have a resemblance to the person who is guilty. I believe in the full force of the law for convicted predators. I think it is a despicable crime. And I also feel that predators, when they're released, shouldn't be living anywhere near children. I broadly support some sort of notion of isolated communities where they're, you know, possibly hundreds of miles away from other people when they're released. I propose that sort of idea. They shouldn't be in a community where there are young children because this is something that unless that sex urge is killed, they're going to be a danger. So I definitely understand the concerns, but I have no sympathy for extremists who then take the law into their own hand and they take no responsibility for it. They basically you know, name and shame people that they have heard are convicted predators, and in some cases they may well be, but I've just always had an unease about that sort of vigilante justice because inevitably, at some point, innocent people are going to be targeted because idiots don't stop to think about whether or not the information is reliable. They just respond emotionally. And believe me, there are some very, very stupid people in this country who believe everything they hear and they respond emotionally and they don't think for themselves. And it's very dangerous. Now I'm going to go on to some other issues which are, in a sense, connected, but not quite. But I'm just encompassing it in this video because I feel that it's also important. Celebrities, in this country, we've had quite a long period now, going back at least 5 years, where there have been a large number of very high profile, middle aged to elderly men, predominantly, who have been accused or tied with historic sexual abuse. Jimmy Savile is the most notorious. Now, Jimmy Savile was a prolific paedophile. He was a despicable, disgusting human being, and he never faced justice for his crimes. And there's virtually no doubt about his guilt. Rolf Harris is another high-profile individual. The former Prime Minister Ted Heath has been tied with this. Now that hasn't been proven. Um, but recently, Cliff Richard has been among those high-profile male celebrities who have been accused of sexual abuse. Now, the important thing here is that Sir Cliff Richard has been cleared, and the police force investigating it has had to concede that they had no evidence to go on. And he has talked about how this has basically ruined his life. And this has opened up a very important question about anonymity. I think it is especially difficult when you're a public figure to begin with. I mean, it's hard for anyone, but when you're a public figure to begin with and you're accused of something like this, the stigma is there forever. And I don't blame Sir Cliff for wanting to take legal action against those who've falsely accused him. Um, I think there is a very, very strong case for anonymity to be waived. I think we have to have a situation of innocent until proven guilty. It has to be that way. And it seems perverse to me that someone accused of serious crime like child abuse or rape can be named, but the accusers have anonymity. Either you name both parties or it's anonymity for everyone. That seems fair to me. There is an argument in rape cases that by naming the accused, then you get victims of a serial sex offender will come forward because they recognize him in court and they will then feel the confidence to come forward. I'm sympathetic to that viewpoint, but I still don't think it is enough of a reason that potentially innocent men are named, plastered all over the national press. They may well be found to be innocent. It's not to say that they are innocent, but the point is when their name is plastered over the press, it doesn't matter if a judge declares them to be innocent. It doesn't matter if the press then goes on to say, oh, by the way, this guy was innocent. The damage is done. And I think that is extremely dangerous. So I think there is a real cause here for anonymity. There is, of course, a risk that if the anonymity is there, and let's say, for example, the press says a 70-year-old singer who was popular in the 70s has been accused of child abuse, then people are going to get into a guessing game, and I guess you could argue innocent people will be accused regardless. I think everyone needs to have responsibility and respect the principle of proven guilty. I do feel a little uneasy when you see the court of the internet deciding that someone is guilty. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of videos online basically saying Sir Edward Heath, our former Prime Minister, was a paedophile. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't, but it seems to me that all of this has emerged 10 years after his death. And I know the lessons from the Jimmy Savile situation was that cover ups happen. But I also feel that we're seeing something akin to trial by media, and it seems to me to be very dangerous. Very dangerous. Um, so surely there needs to be some lessons in this. There's two things that need to be there. And first of all, just because someone is in a position of prestige doesn't mean they should be above the law. And no one is perfect. I mean, there's any number of examples that could be used here. Johnny Depp, for example, many of his fans are saying, oh no, Johnny can do no wrong with his domestic violence allegations. I just don't know. I think we have to take an open minded approach. Because the thing about celebrities is it can be either a curse or a blessing. On one hand, the hardline supporters of said celebrity will blindly believe that they're innocent no matter what. On the other hand, that fame can be an Achilles heel. I mean, look at what Oscar Pistorius is going through. I have to be honest, I feel some degree of sympathy for Oscar Pistorius. Call me naive, call me ignorant, whatever. I really, really don't believe that Oscar Pistorius wanted to kill his girlfriend. And apparently he's losing friends, he's being yelled at in the street. I don't know the whole story. There are those who are saying he's shown no remorse and so on. I haven't seen that. His public statements are that he lives with it every day, and I just don't know. I just don't know. But I feel that we assume that celebrity gives this sort of protection to people. I don't know that it does. I think sometimes being famous makes it a lot harder because your name is plastered all over not only national media, but in the case of Oscar Pistorius, international media. And we just don't know. Innocent until proven guilty. I understand other countries that's not necessarily the protocol, but in this country that is a very well established protocol, and that's right, it should be. So all I'm saying is that when we're talking about serious crime, for God's sake, let's allow due process to take place. The guilty must face justice, and nobody should be above the law. But by the same token, let's not spin and pander to rumours and to trial by media, trial by internet. That is extremely dangerous. Everybody deserves due process, regardless of who they are. I don't care how famous they are or how anonymous they are. Everyone deserves due process, and everyone should be subject to the law. This, to me, seems to be a very open minded and reasonable principle. But I do believe that vigilantism is extremely dangerous because there is no safeguard for for basically taking responsibility in the case that innocent people are falsely accused. That is extremely dangerous. At least in a court of law, you have a jury of peers who determine the evidence. Groups like UK Pedos Exposed don't really care about the evidence. They're just plastering these pictures of people online and they're alleging these things, but there's no due process there, and that worries me. I'm not sympathetic to paedophiles at all. I think they're scum. But there has to be due process. Let me know your thoughts.